Good morning. We are on Lamed Hayamad Base 35b. Second line from the top. We were discussing King David as he retrieved the ark from the Philistines and the mistakes that happened there, using the wagon versus putting it on the shoulders. King David's mistake, and then Uzzah's mistake, touching the ark or trying to grab it. The Gemara says trying to grab hold of it. From there, the Gemara sidetracked to a previous event years earlier, before King Saul becomes king, while Shmuel Hanavi is still ruling the Jewish people as prophet and shofet, as judge, which was a sort of king position, not exactly, but kind of. And there too, there's the mistake of the Jewish people looking at the ark, whatever that meant. We had different interpretations about what looking meant, as the ark was coming back on its own, really, from the Philistines to the Jewish people.
I was reading Samuel.
Yeah.
And they said Saul was so tall.
Head and shoulders above everyone else, yeah.
Head and shoulders, what does that mean? Head and shoulders above everyone.
It doesn't mean literally head and shoulders, or means figuratively, that like he was above and beyond everybody else. In terms of his character, probably maybe a combination of both. Or he was like 6'8", I don't know. Anyway, so those chapters is right after the chapters that we're describing here. Yeah. Anyway, so there, the Gemara makes the verse says, you can read the verse there, second line on Lamed Hayamad Base 35b. Vayach ba'am shivim ish v'chamishim elef ish. And God struck of the people for inappropriately looking at the ark. Right? What were the two interpretations? One interpretation was that they were working the fields and didn't stop to give it the proper due attention. And the other interpretation was that they looked at the ark and said, "Whose ark are you? Like, who got you mad that you left, and why are you now happy you're coming back? Like, well, what's going on here?" And as a result of that, the verse says, God struck the people, 70 men and 50,000 men, which is a strange phrasing. The reason why it's strange is because of the extra word ish. The first time it says the word ish, man, it could have said, Ayach ba'am, and God struck of the people, Shivim v'chamishim elef ish, 50,000 and 70 men. And that would have been a total number. But the verse puts the word ish after each number, as if like it's two separate numbers, 70 men and 50,000 men. So you might have read the simple meaning of the verse that it's 50,000 and 70 men. If that's the case, say so. Don't put the word men in between each of the two sets of numbers, implying two sets, 170, 150,000. Why divided? And what's that about?
Does it do that in other verses? Where
Usually it's, like for example, go to the
like
counting.
Or something.
That's right. Yeah, there it says.
One each. Or
to the best of my knowledge, if it's what you can open up, check the Chumash. You can have a look, but I'm pretty sure it's just one ish, where it just says like 20,000 and 30,000 and 2,000 and 105 men.
Didn't they say also that with Sarah? She lived.
That's right. So with Sarah, it says year, right? Implying that her age, at whatever age he was equal, right? So there's an inference that the Torah is trying to teach you there. That's right. The Gemara comments on that. Rashi quotes that as well. What do you have there by Midbar? Sorry?
Jacob also.
By Jacob, I don't remember.
His last years were the best years of his life.
Right, the 17 years at the end.
50 and then 15.
Could be. What do you have there? Look in the Hebrew. Look in the Hebrew. So how many times is this ish there? Yeah, you want to pass
me
it?
out here because
Let's have a look.
I don't know if this is the right verses. It's a tally, but
Okay, so you can look at that. Yeah, the number was 3,200.
yeah,
The number was
doesn't say.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, 630. Sorry, apply 2,630. Just a straight number. Not saying ish each time. Anyway. Okay, so the Gemara just says like this: Rabbi Abo, and Rabbi Eliezer are discussing this question. Chad Amar, one of the two of them said, Shivim Ish. It was actually 70 men. That's a total of people who were killed. Each of the 70 shekel were comparable to Kachamishim Elef, like as if they were 50,000. They were men of stature equal to 50,000. It's quite a remarkable man. By whatever measure you want to measure this, it just says comparable. Comparable in what manner? In their character, in their leadership, whether they each leaders of 50,000 people, right? But the word shekel doesn't imply leaders, it implies equal to, but maybe the reason why they were equal to is because they were leaders of 50,000 each. Either way, you're talking about serious people here.
They were so pious. How could they just look at it and continue?
Right. So you see, there's a running theme here. King David is also very extremely pious and makes a subtle mistake. I would imagine, is also quite a pious person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been given the job to lead the procession. Right. So there's a running theme here where there's people who are very close to Torah but make a subtle mistake. And here you have these people, 70 in number, that are equal to 50,000, whatever that equal means. No comment from Rashi as to what the equality means. So maybe it means they're leaders of tribes, each of which are 50,000. That could be. Maybe in their piety, they're equal to 50,000. Maybe in their strength, maybe in their character. I don't know. But just what it says here. Either way, it's quite something. It's something to think about. Also the numbers. Okay, well, let's finish the discussion here and I'll indicate that there's something about the numbers here. And I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure that there's something here. Sorry?
There were 70 and they were
70, and each of the 70 are equal to 50,000. 50,000. Each one of them were equal to 50,000. Each of the 70 were equal to 50,000.
Okay.
So either they're leaders, each of 50,000 people, or they are in their piety equal to 50,000, or in their character and their strength. I'm not sure, but all the Gemara says is that each of the 70 are equal to 50,000. And thus it says 70 men and 50,000 men, meaning it's one set of men, but described in two ways. First described as they are, and then secondly described what they're comparable to. That's how one of them explains this Gemara. This verse.
Their leaders, between the 70 and then they led 300.
So the Gemara makes it very clear. Each and every one of the 70 were comparable to 50,000. So if it's leaders, then they each led 50,000. So that's how many? 3.5 million? 3.5 million people, which is not unreasonable. 3.5 million people, Jewish people. Could have been more. And then they were leaders of tribes, could be. Not tribes as in the 12 tribes, but leaders of like clans and whatnot. It's possible. Sorry?
50,000.
The number?
Yeah.
So I'm going to open the floor up to that. 70 is a number we hear quite a bit. 70 nations, 70 members of the Sanhedrin. We'll see in a moment. There's a connection there. 70 is like the 7 divine attributes, each one worth 10. So there's a number 70 that's
770.
770, certainly. And right, that's certainly a number that we hear a lot. But 50,000 is something interesting, and like if the floor is open, especially as you see it in the reverse.
But when Moses did the census of all the tribes,
Yeah,
there were 50,000 men.
sure. But there's multiple numbers there.
Yeah.
So you have to find what the meaning of 50,000 is. Here, let's see the other interpretation. The Chadamar, the other interpretation is Chamishim Elafayu. It was actually 50,000 men that were struck. And each of the 50,000 Shokol Keshivim are comparable to 70 Sanhedrin. They're comparable to 70, but not just 70 random men. They're comparable to 70 men of the Sanhedrin. So here it's clearly talking about their stature as people, not leaders, because it's not 50,000 people each being leaders of 70, right? And had the Gemara said each of 50,000 were comparable to 70, that would be impressive enough. One person comparable to 70. The Gemara adds, each of the 50,000 are comparable to not just 70 men, but 70 men who could have been on the Sanhedrin, 70 men who could have been on the high court. Each of these 50,000, not just comparable to one person of the high court, but each of the 50,000 were comparable to all 70 on the high court. So who exactly were the 70 on the high court and what was their stature? If there's 50,000 Jewish people, each of which are equivalent to 70 people that could be on the Sanhedrin, then the people who are actually on the Sanhedrin, what level will they at? Follow my question? It just gives you some idea of what's happening here. So floor's open on what this means and what's the difference between 50,000 men that are comparable to 70 versus 70 that are comparable to 50,000.
Because each one of those on the, in the battlefield were 70 times,
There's no battlefield here.
not battlefield, but.
They're just watching.
Sorry?
They're watching. It's not a battlefield here. They were at battle years, months earlier when the ark was taken from them, right?
Right.
But now there's no battle. They're just working the field and they see the ark strolling up on its own and they all come to watch.
But each one was 70 times. Well,
That's one.
I learned it as each one of the.
No. So there's two interpretations. One is,
That was it saying?
okay, one is 70 men were killed, each of which are worth 50,000. Interpretation A. Interpretation B is 50,000 men were killed, each of which are comparable to the 70 people on the Sanhedrin.
So there's 70 times, each one is 70 times. Whatever.
Each one is worth a total Sanhedrin.
Sanhedrin.
Each one is worth a full Sanhedrin.
Right.
That's 50,000 Jewish men that are worthy of being not just on Sanhedrin, but worthy of all the total Sanhedrin. So who are the actual guys on the actual Sanhedrin? And what kind of level were they at? At least 50,000, I don't know, were they on the Sanhedrin? Only 70 of them could have been, not the rest of them, maybe. Right? And there's no indication that these are the members of the Sanhedrin themselves. And we also have to consider which of these two interpretations is more literal. The 50,000 each worth 70 of the Sanhedrin, or 70 people each worth 50,000? Which one would you take as more literal? I would go with 70 that are each comparable to 50,000 for the simple reason that why are there so many people hanging out in the field waiting for this event, this unexpected event? Right? The ark walking back was an unexpected event on the Jewish people's part. They happened to be in the field. That's what the verse describes it, right? They were working in the field and they see a wagon with the ark and they all got up. They were all excited. Maybe not excited enough, but the verse says that they were rejoiced. That's the verse says, right? And they went and they offered offerings. They put it on the rock.
I think.
So 50,000 men are gathered. 50,000 high-statued men happen to be gathered in this location and the ark strolls up. Or 70 people, maybe there's a meeting of the council and these are 70 people that are leaders and all of a sudden the ark walks up. That would kind of make sense. There's a meeting, the ark, maybe they're even meeting about the ark. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there.
As far as exaggerating this to make the point, I think that how precious Torah is.
That's right.
Whether
Now,
you're a high scholar or a worker in the field, you have to give the proper deference to Torah. I think it's an exaggeration in any event.
no, right. So obviously there's a message. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's right. So there's certainly an underlying message here that's not necessarily related to the literal meaning that's trying to be conveyed here. And we have to understand what that is. What's 70 that's worth 50,000 and 50,000 that's worth 70? I don't know. Floor's open. Okay. Continues the Gemara further. Okay, the Gemara now goes back to the original event that it was talking about, which is the time King David retrieved the ark, right? This story of the 70 people that died or the 50,000 people died alternatively, that is years earlier when the ark comes back on its own under Samuel's leadership. We got into that discussion because we were talking about, we as in the Gemara, got into this discussion because we were talking about King David who retrieved the ark from the Philistines and the mistakes made then, right? Where he put it on the wagon versus carrying.
They put it on the wagon.
Right. So we're going back now to the original story, which is when King David put it on the ark. You're right. So the story we talked about before, where the 70 or 50,000 died, is when the Philistines put it on the wagon. So there's no comment on that because they're not expected to know anything, right? But the story we talked about earlier is when King David puts it on the wagon. Okay. Now during that event, when King David put it on the wagon and Uzzah touched it and died, the verse describes like this. Now that story is described in two places, in the book of Samuel and in the book of Chronicles. We already raised one comparison in the discussion, in the difference between there and there, which was what, remember? There was something about the comparison between the two events. I can't remember. Anyway, but the Gemara now is going to quote one verse from the book of Samuel describing that procession, and another verse from the book of Chronicles describing the same procession. And they seem to be at odds. The Gemara is going to pose one resolution, reject that resolution, pose another resolution. I'm going to read it literally, and God willing, tomorrow, perhaps we'll suggest a way of understanding that discussion, this resolution on this more spiritual level. And I'll drop a few hints, maybe you can figure out on your own. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. The verse reads, "Vayihi kitzadu noisei aron Hashem," and it was as the people carrying the ark took their steps. Shisha tza'adim, every time they took 6 steps. Vayizbach, and they offered to God, shoy umedi, a ox and a fatling, a young animal that's well fed. Okay, so every 6 steps, 2 offerings. That is the verse in the book of Samuel.
Parallel funeral.
Perhaps, yeah. Tiksiv, then it says in the book of Chronicles, when it describes the same event, Shiva partim, 70 oxen, the Shiva elim and 7 oxen, Shiva partim, 7 oxen, the Shiva elim and 7 rams. So which one is it? Every 6 steps, 1? Or was it 7 oxen and 7 ram? Or every 6 steps, 1 ox and 1 fatling? Seems to be contradictory. So we need to resolve this. Resolution number 1. Omar Papa Bar Shmuel. Papa son of Shmuel says, I'll call psiya upsiya, for every single step they took, every single step, not every 6 steps, every single step. Shoru Medi, an ox and a fatling. Took 1 step, stopped, 2 offerings. Took 1 step, stopped, 2 offerings.
Did they wait till everything was burnt?
Seem, or maybe they prepared it and they kept it going. I don't know. No explanation.
You ever get to their destination?
Yeah, took a long time. And then they brought it to someone's home, right? It was kept in someone's home for a while until it made it to Shiloh, right? And then I'll call Sheish, until it made to Jerusalem. I'll call Sheish v'Sheish, and then after every 6, Psiya stops, Shiva partim v'Shiva elim, 7 oxen and 7 rams. So every single step, 2 offerings. And then after every 6, 14 offerings, 7 cows, 7 ram. That's a lot of offerings.
And never get there.
So Amalei Rav Chisda tells our Papa, in Cain, if this is the story, Milei says, Kolat Yisrael Bamos. You fill the entire Israel with, okay, so the Gemara doesn't say that animals, the Gemara says Bamos. Bamos are these makeshift altars. Private altars are one you should do in your offerings, because it's not in the street, it's in an altar. So every single step is an altar, and then every 6 is enough for 14 animals. It's a huge amount of altars, like what's going on? So Rav Chisda therefore proposes another alternative explanation. Elam Rav Chisda says, I'll call Sheish v'Sheish psiyos. Every single 6 steps, Shoru Medi, they did a ox and a fatling, as per the verse in Samuel.
After how many? Sorry?
Every 6 steps. Still a lot. I'll call Shisha Sadarim Sheish psiyos. After 6 sets of 6 steps, then Shiva partim v'Shiva elim, 7 oxen and 7 rams. So every 6 steps are 2 offerings, cow fatling, ox fatling, and then every 6 sets of 6, then they had the 7 as per the verse in Chronicles. That's how he explains it. So it's still plenty of offerings, but not as many as the first one, which was every single step. They took 2 offerings, and then every 6 steps, 14 offerings.
They must have had so many animals.
It must have. Okay, so tomorrow, God willing, I'll suggest a way of understanding this on its deeper level, and I'll drop this. If Chisda says in his objection, right, his objection is not that there's too many animals. His objection is not that it's going to take too long. His objection is, Milesa Aretz Bames. You filled Israel with altars. In Kabbalah, Eretz, the land, Eretz Yisrael, is Malchus, the attribute of Malchus, the attribute of divine projection or creation. And the 6, Malchus is a recipient of 6 middays. You have 6 steps. Right? Yeah, you have 6 steps that are set here, going into Malchus, and then you have a total of 7. Once you have the 6 and then the 1 Malchus, a total of 7. That's the 7 middays. So his objection must be something to the effect of Malchus is too overstuffed. It can't handle that much. Just going to put that out there. Perhaps we'll explain what that means tomorrow, but something to percolate for those a little inclined to the Kabbalistic system.
They all know that the ark was coming.
Yeah, King David made it a meeting. We read the chapter. King David calls a meeting all the leaders and says, let's go retrieve it. King Saul couldn't do it. We're going to do it.
And they built so many altars.
That's his objection. Every step, so many altars. So his alternative is every 6 steps, so many altars. That's not a lot of altars. That's also a lot. So what does this mean? Too much altars. That's why I'm suggesting in a Kabbalistic level, somehow the numbers in our Papa's formulation is too much for Malchus to handle. Whereas the numbers in Rav Chisda's is enough for Malchus to handle. Something to think about. And God willing, maybe tomorrow we'll discuss this.
Right.
Okay, wonderful day, Eden.